Space travel is so cool. The godlike views, the way everything syncs so well to pop music, the knowledge that history is being made. Yeah, it's great until you get incinerated in an automated engine blast, or crushed by a ship rolling over your body, or your visor is shattered by a cable whipping crazily in the void. Then it kind of sucks. For All Mankind shows both sides. Happy Valley ends on a terrifying note that calls to mind the lapel-grabbing season opener, as well as the Apollo 24 25th disasters of Bent Bird, Season 1, Episode 9. Another rescue mission that goes to hell. It capped an outstanding outing that kept the focus on Mars with humor and suspense, while returning us to Earth only as strictly necessary. Since Ellen's presidency and conspiracy theories around NASA aren't nearly as thrilling as a drag race in space. Ego, duty, and self-sacrifice were the keynotes this week, with Ed, Joel Kinnaman, Danielle, Chris Marshall, and the, mostly, faceless Soviet cosmonauts jockeying for first one to the red planet. Any fears that older, bitterer Ed was going to forget his values and his lust to win were put to rest when he nobly agreed to rescue the Russian ship, which fried its engines in a desperate attempt to get ahead of the pack. The majority of the episode, written by Joe Menosky and directed, again, by Wendy Stanzler, was occupied with a series of chess moves to determine who would advance and who would drop out. And it's not over. Not by a long shot. The packed 8-minute cold open tense, insouciant, triumphant reminded us why we love For All Mankind. The way it juggles humor, shiny F/X, and heroism without reverting to melodrama or cheap twists. Well, it's interplanetary space travel. Anything can go south on a dime. In the bravura opening, composers Jeff Russo and Paul Doucet's urgent strings signal the pulse of the race from the opening frames. Phoenix is in the lead. Sojourner 1's zooming along second. The Soviets, not so imaginatively named, Mars 94 is pulling up third. At Helios Mission Control, Dev, tasting victory, says he'll distribute the Interstellar Prize among all employees. Bill Strasser, Noah Harpster, is impressed but skeptical. Ed and Danny still look cocky as hell on the command deck of Phoenix. On a call to Danny in Sojourner, Ed is respectful but gloating. Danny has her diplomatic smile on. Then Danny and her jaunty crew, including Kelly, Cynthia Wu, initiate Operation Jolly Roger. Kelly hits her iPod and a pirate sea shanty comes on, with Aleda, Coral Pina, and Margot, Ren Schmidt, back on Earth at Mission Control monitoring the process. Large armature units expand from each side of Sojourner's hull and before you can say, Captain Jack Sparrow, massive golden sails unfurl around the tiny shuttle like gargantuan butterfly wings. Sojourner 1 is harnessing solar power to give it an extra boost that will put it into Mars orbit 8 days before Phoenix. I wonder if production designer Dan Bishop took inspiration from the James Webb Space Telescope's golden hexagonal sun's healed. Dev is inscrutable as ever, but he's furious about being beaten by NASA. First is what matters, it's the only thing that matters, first is what changes things. He fumes at an increasingly apprehensive Karen, Chantel Van Santen, before smashing a computer on the floor and exiting with scary calm. Of course, this Steve Jobs-like control freak will have the last laugh when the Soviet craft needs saving, and Ed volunteers to give up the mission to bring on the extra crew, Phoenix. Being an ex-hotel, has the square footage and resources. Dev locks Ed out of the controls and forces Phoenix to continue to Mars. Dev throws the responsibility of saving the Soviets to NASA, and Danny glumly goes from nearly winning the race to losing it on humanitarian grounds. There's a hint of hope that Sojourner can siphon fuel from the Soviet craft to allow the mission to continue, but with the two vessels colliding at the end of the episode, we'll have to wait and see who's even alive. At any rate, Danny and Ed came off well, with the Soviets coming off as crummy Soviets cheats, per usual. Tempering the anti-Slavic sentiment is the presence of long-suffering Roland Baranov, Alexander Sokovikov, on Donnie's crew. Baranov was the Soviet cosmonaut who was, mistakenly, shot on the moon in Season 2, then defected to America while recovering in Jamestown. 10 years on, Baranov has an American wife, Jessica Galinas, and son who seem to do little else but complain. Enjoy the American dream, comrade. Baranov was one of several surprise callbacks to previous seasons. As the series slowly departs from alt history to the realm of pure sci-fi, it's closing the boundaries between its own legends and a pop culture mythos familiar to the audience. Danny tells Sojourner crew member Sylvie Kaplan, Heidi Sulzman, that the view from the cockpit looks like an ant farm, which she explains as a little inside joke, the ants that got loose on Jamestown in Season 1. Relaxing in the mess hall, the Phoenix crew quote their favorite lines from the Alien franchise. Nick Carrado, Daniel David Stewart, overdoing the class clown routine, starts acting out a cheesy bit from Love in the Sky, the movie made about Gordo and Tracy Stevens' love affair and death on the moon. That's when, of course, Danny walks in. Danny asks Nick to step outside to talk, and he proceeds to bully Nick, forcing him to quote some cringy lines. Ed shows up and warns Danny he has to lead by example. A very complicated father-son relationship is developing between them, one that might rise above the inevitable "I had sex with your wife" revelation on the Martian surface.